Good evening, everyone. Hello.
Good evening, ma'am.
Right, okay. So,
Evening, madam.
good evening, dear. Give me a second. I have to fix my. Okay. Right. Okay. Right. Now it's fixed. Hmm. Right. Mm. Right. And this is our second session or third session? Third session, right?
Second session, ma'am.
Second session. We started with methodology and then the terms, approaches, methods, and techniques, the connection and the alignment of the three. And then we looked at student-centered approach and teacher-centered approach. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah. Did we start our discussion on lecture method, demonstration method, and all that?
We did up to the lecture method, ma'am.
Lecture method. Thank you very much for actually coming back to me, responding. It's very important, right? So we actually started now the two main approaches we finished. Student teacher-centered approach, the most traditional, and student-centered approach, the very new and modern. So you can see they are the two, they are poles apart in their actually approaches. The student role, teacher role, then learning theories that they are grounded on, then techniques that they use, what is referred to as learning, all these things are poles apart, and hope that you have understood it, okay? And then align with alignment with the approaches. In alignment with the approaches, like we have methods to be selected. Support that you are a teacher-centered approach that you're going to adopt today with the lesson, thinking that you have to cover a vast area. So exams are around the corner. So you can't be actually going student-centered because discovery learning is time-consuming. So you think that you want to go teacher-centered today. So you are actually to select, as your approach is teacher-centered, the methods appropriate. What are the appropriate methods for teacher-centered education? What are some approach methods that is aligned with teacher-centered education? Teacher-centered approach. Teacher imparting knowledge. Students are passive. They just listen and learn. You can cater to a large number. Student are MC vessel, passive. ඔය ඔක්කොම එන්නේ මොන approach එකේද? Teacher centered approach. එහෙමනම් ඒවට ගැලපෙන what are the methods that are aligned with the teacher centered approaches?
Lecture method.
Yeah, very good. Lecture method and demonstration method. You do it and show them. අපිට lecture method එකට කියනවා chalk and talk method. So if you select teacher centered approach, you will use the lecture method. And even today, though it has its own limitations, it is not in par with new thinking of learning. We use lecture method. Why? We have large classes. We have vast contents to be covered. We lack resources. We have packed classrooms. So with all that, sometimes we go lecture method. And with adults, of course, lecture method is very effective. But we are talking about pedagogy, the young learners, right? But teacher-centered approaches have their limitations, like students are passive. When they listen and learn, they learn very little, right? They are demotivated. It's a boring class. Um, all these limitations are there, but sometimes due to lack of resources, due to time restrictions, due to vast contents to be covered, we use lecture method. So lecture method has its all features of student teacher-centered approach. Students are passive, they listen and learn. Teacher actually spoon feed, teacher explains everything. Center of learning and teaching process is the teacher. Teacher decides what to teach, and students just listen and learn. All these features are there. But as we are still using lecture method, we can think of making the lecture method a more student-centered or more effective by doing little things, by adding little elements to the lecture method. So what are they? We discuss up to that point, no? So what are they? How can we make the lecture method effective? How can we make the lecture method more effective? Didn't we discuss that part? Hmm? Okay, I'm opening the document. Right. Teaching methods. Did you receive your lecture note?
Yes, madam.
All right. This is the today's lesson then, teaching methods. So we are selecting the teaching methods appropriate based on our teaching approach. If it is teacher-centered, we will select lecture method or demonstration method. If it is student-centered approach, you will select discussion, scientific method, project method, etc. So one of the criteria for selecting teaching methods is the teaching approach that you believe in. And then content to be taught. If it is actually a difficult content, you will select lecture method because teacher can explain everything. If you want to, actually it's a very simple one. Students can easily understand. You will opt for student-centered discovery learning. So discussion method. They already know a lot about the topic. So according to the content to be taught also, you can select the method. And then availability of teaching learning resources. If you are in a packed classroom, there's no way of actually arranging the classroom for discussions in half circles or circles. Hardly that teacher has space to walk up and down. So the teacher will opt for lecture method rather than thinking of having brainstorming or discussions or anything else. Then individual learner differences. There are some students, they like to listen and learn. So teacher has to explain everything, they easily learn. And there are some students, actually, they like to actively participate in learning. So there are different learning, uh, individual learning styles. So you definitely have to cater to them also in deciding teaching methods. Size of the class. If it is
Excuse
a
me.
large, yeah,
Excuse,
dear. Yeah,
sorry for interrupting. And ma'am, here now
yeah.
according to the individual learner differences. Now, as you
Mm,
said, that is it depends on the preferences of the students.
mm.
But can't we take the capacity of their knowledge? There are progressive students and the other students. According to that, the teacher.
Definitely, yes. Yeah, that is, of course, the level of the student. Individual learner differences, ekaktamai learning styles, personalities. And the other thing is actually their level, the level of the student. So some are very actually good and they know a lot and they can actually engage in their own discovery learning. But there are some those who are very average or um, very slow and they are below average, then you need to explain everything for them. That also can come under individual learner differences. You're correct. Okay. That, not only that, their personalities, some are actually introverts. They silently take everything into their head, and they calculate inside their heads everything. They hardly speak. And there are some those who really want to actually be on the go and talk and make friends and group activities and all that. So depending on that also, that you will select the method. Definitely, yes. Then time allocation. If it is actually discussion method, project method, they are time consuming. But if it is lecture method, teacher goes on talking, they listen and learn, it is time saving. So you can think how much time is allocated for this. And if you have very little time, then you can't actually go student centered, and discussions and project methods, they are not scientific method, are not possible because they're time consuming. So likewise, these are the criteria that you need to take into consideration in selecting the appropriate method, and basically the approach, whether it's teacher-centered or student-centered. The philosophical assumption and approaches to teaching. You decide on that, based on that only, that you can select the method. So you can't say I'm student-centered and take lecture method as the method. That is not possible, right? Okay, they are not aligned. Right. Did I do this brainstorming activity?
No,
No.
ma'am.
Yeah. Now here it's a small brainstorming activity. Select the best teaching methods you would choose in each
I
of these.
did this.
Karane, we
Oh,
did this, no? Right, okay. Then the lecture method. So we will discuss in the lecture method what are the features. Kela, you can now, lecture method comes in teacher-centered approach. If lecture method is aligned with the teacher-centered approach, you can easily answer these. You can complete this grade. Lecture method, what is the teaching approach? If you select lecture method is chalk and talk method. Teacher go in front of the class and explain. So what is the approach that the lecture method is?
teacher-centered.
Yeah, highly teacher-centered approach. That is why you select lecture method. So lecture method is grounded on teacher-centered approach. Lecture method is grounded on teacher-centered approach. Then teacher's role. In the lecture method. Yeah.
Knowledge imparter.
Knowledge imparter. Very good. What else? What else? Is it only knowledge imparter? Right. Student role. In lecture method. Passive. Listen and learn. Yeah. Yeah.
Passive.
Yeah. Passive learners. They listen and learn. Okay. Class size in the lecture method. Class size. Lecture method can be used with large classes, or the class has to be a limited number of students. Very obvious. Huh?
Large class.
Large, even a large class can be handled. So when you have a large class, you have no option. Discussion method, nang teacher has to monitor. Project method, nang teacher has to put them into group and get them to do, and teacher has to guide them. But lecture method, teacher goes in front of class and go on talking. So because of that, if you have a large class, you will use lecture method. So class size, large class can be handled. Content, what kind of content is taught using lecture method?
Vast content.
Yeah, vast content, and at the same time, it's very easy because teacher goes on telling us, so a lot of content can be covered. You're correct. But is it only when it is vast that you use lecture method? There is another important consideration in the use of lecture method. If it is a difficult content also, complex subject matter, difficult content. So the discovery learning, do it and learn, is difficult. Discussions, they don't hardly know about the subject. So then the teacher can actually opt for lecture method and teacher explains them everything first. Vast and difficult content. What are the merits of lecture method? Advantages of lecture method?
Time saving and can control a large class, and the preparation is less. The teacher doesn't want to prepare a lot.
Very good. Teacher doesn't have to prepare because she knows the subject matter. She can just walk into the classroom and go on telling. But if it is other way around, you want to get the learner to discover, you have to prepare activities, you have to prepare materials, you have to plan everything beforehand. No? So it's a lot of actually challenging. There's a lot of challenges faced by the teachers in the preparation for the student centered. But here in lecture method, it's easy. You walk into the class and go on telling because you're knowledgeable. So one more merit is that, right? The student will not go out of point. Student will not go out of point. Because of that, the lesson can be focused. The lesson is focused because the students can't go out of topic. So it's a focused lesson. Got it? That is also merit. When you get the students to discover, they actually go out of the topic and main areas and very difficult. Is it okay? Do you understand?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yeah.
ma'am.
Then what are the limitations of lecture method? What are the limitations of lecture method? Yeah.
All the students are passive and
Yeah, that is it. Students are made to be passive learners. Listen and learn. Because of that, they are demotivated. It's a big disadvantage of lecture method. And what else?
lesson would go.
Listen. Yeah.
Lesson would be boring.
Yeah, students are bored.
Attract-
Because of that, they are
Yeah.
demotivated. You're correct. And I want to show you this. It's very important at this stage, right? I will show you. Have you heard of this Dale's Cone of Learning? Have you heard of this Dale's Cone of Learning?
No, ma'am.
No.
I will show you Dale's Cone of Learning. This is very important at this time, okay? We can have a look at it. Yeah. Let's see what's shared. Now you can see I'm sharing the screen. Can you see?
Yes, madam.
Yeah. Yeah, the
madam.
cone of learning, Edgar Dale. It is referred to as Dale's cone of learning. Dale is the name of the educationist. Edgar Dale, the cone of learning. If not, you can see Dale's cone of learning කියලා කියනවා. So according to Dale's cone of learning, right, the learner is passive here. The learner involvement passive. The learner involvement active. So what? Reading. You get them to read and learn. 10% of what they read will be learned or remembered. You get them to listen, hearing words. 20% of what they hear. So lectures, teacher goes on telling, they remember only 20% of what they hear. Seeing, 30% of what they see. Watching a movie, looking at an exhibition, watching a demonstration, seeing it done on location. අපි කියනවා see and hear දෙකම එකතු කරාම still they learn only 50% of what they see and hear. They are all made students very passive learners. They just see and hear. They are not doing anything actively. Only 50% of learning. But if you get them to participate in a discussion, giving a talk, you get them to say 70% of what they say is remembered. And then you can get them to do a drama, presentation, simulation, right? Doing real thing, performances. Do it, get them to do it. 90% of what they do is remembered. So you can say in the passive classroom where just the students read, hear, see, or see and hear, they are passive and remembering is less than 50%. But if you get them to talk, 70% of remembering. If you get them to do 90% of remembering. So what you want, actually it's a remembering, learning කියලා තියෙනවා. The cone of learning. So 90% of learning if they say it, if they do it. So why don't you get them to do it and say it? So then you have to be student-centered teacher. But if you get them to read, hear, listen, see and hear in a typical class, that is how it happens. It's only less than 50% of learning. So that is why one of the limitations of lecture method is you get them to see, you get them to hear, and they will learn very little, 20% of what they say, what you say. Is it clear?
Yes, ma'am.
Yeah, though it is time consuming, though it is difficult for the teacher to prepare materials and activities and monitoring them, all these challenges are there in student-centered approach. But it's worth doing because if you get them to say it is 70%, if you get them to do, it is 90% of learning and remembering. It's worth doing. Okay. So you can actually talk, when you talk about teacher-centered and student-centered, you can't help but talk about Edgar Dale's cone of learning as well. Okay. Right. Back to my lecture note. So now we looked at lecture method, its features, but whether it has its own limitations. Across the globe, lecture method is still being used, which we term as talk and chalk method, because teacher talks, goes on talking while writing something on the board. That is how it happens in the lecture method. But as it's being used across the globe, still it's being used, we can think of making your lecture a good lecture. Making your lecture a good lecture. How can you make the lecture a good lecture? These are the points. A good lecture should not be too long as to exceed the student's attention span. So even if it is an adult learner, you should not actually make it hours and hours because they can't concentrate. They can't concentrate. Because of that, you have to make sure that if you're conducting a lecture, it is actually a short lecture that you have to do. And then a good lecture should address a single topic. Because in the lecture, the students just listen and learn. No, they are not to talk, ask questions, and discuss anything. Because of that, don't have to make it a complex one. You have to make it a very simple, to the point, one single topic to be discussed. Then, if you're conducting a lecture, you have to make sure that your lecture is very clear. Technical terms, terminology, everything is actually explained, well explained, because your students will not actually engage in interaction. So make sure that it's very simple and clear. To make it clearer, you can use examples and comparisons or analogies to make the lecture an effective one. When you actually give them a talk about a point, you can give them examples, you can give them comparisons to make it clearer for them. So you can use other techniques like, discussion, question and answer sessions, visual aids, use of visual aids. These kind of different techniques can be added to the lecture method. Okay, that is it. So though a lecture method is one of the traditional methods, it has its own limitations. It has its advantages as well, and across the globe, it's still being used. So if you're selecting lecture method for some reasons, right, make sure that you're making it a very good one, a effective one, by making it short, simple, to the point. Then everything is clearly explained, and making it clearer by drawing examples and comparisons or analogies, using some other techniques to add on to the lecture method, like question and answer sessions, discussions, visual aids, maps, etc. Then you can minimize the limitations of the lecture method and make it a more effective one. Are you okay?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, madam.
Good, good, good,
Yes,
good, good,
madam.
good, 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 good. Then we are coming to the demonstration method. If you take the demonstration method, as I told you before, this also is somewhat teacher-centered, because teacher go in front of class. අපි කියන show and tell method. අරක chalk and talk method, make a show and tell method. Teacher shows and explains. Students are to see and hear. So this is also highly teacher-centered. But as we discuss in the lecture method, you can handle large classes. You can go in front of the class, elevated platform, and you can show how to do something while explaining it. You think of science experiment. Due to lack of resources, right? Everyone cannot be given the chemicals, tubes, and no labs to be taken, your students to be taken and all that. So you can't help but use demonstration method, which is actually coming under teacher-centered approach. They are the teacher, we call it show and tell. Teacher actually shows and tells, explains. This is also highly teacher-centered, but due to very many reasons, resources, large classes, time factor, due to very many reasons, that we use demonstration method. So then science experiment, you actually go in front of class and show it to them, rather than getting them to go to the lab and do it on their own, due to very many reasons, right? It happens. So the demonstration, even a dance, right? Teacher goes in front of the class and dance, and teacher has no time to individually go and actually see and help the students, because it's a large class, right? And time consuming syllabus to be covered and all that. So if you use demonstration method, You have to make sure you do it in a scientific manner, you do it appropriately. So because of that, we are looking at how to conduct a good demonstration. So demonstration is show and tell. No? So teacher goes in front of the class and show them and explain. So you have to make sure that all the students in the class can see you and hear you. All the students, each and everyone should see you and hear you. Otherwise, it's unfair. But I have observed some lessons, teachers actually ignore the fact that everyone should see him or her. And then they actually start actually idling. They start talking to the next door, the next person. And the whole lesson is actually disturbed and they are not learning anything. So it's one of the most important criteria, though the students, teachers ignore this fact that you have to make sure each and every child can see and hear you so they are not ignored, right? And then observe all safety rules and procedures. So if you're actually using chemicals, you have to wear a mask. You have to get your students to wear masks. You have to actually get your students to use gloves. Like that, you have to make sure that all the safety rules and procedures are observed. Then, when you are explaining and showing it, make sure you are keeping eye contact with the class. You have to keep eye contact with the class. You have to make sure that you ask, encourage questions from them, and make sure that everyone is actually noticed. Otherwise, our teacher is not looking at us. Teacher is actually looking only at the front row. So we can just idle thinking comes to them. So this is the show and tell. You explain why and how it is done. And once the demonstration is done, you need to actually use the summary to strengthen your explanation. The summary can be given by the teacher herself. If not, the teacher can ask a series of questions to get the students to provide the summary for you. It's a clever way of doing. So it is more, at least you are minimizing the teacher-centered elements in it and try to incorporate a little bit of active participation of the students. So the summary teacher her or himself can give. If not, you can actually ask a series of questions from the students. And that is the summary of what you demonstrated. So this is how you can actually conduct a good demonstration. So I'm actually not showing it now anymore. Can you tell me how to actually conduct a good demonstration? Yes. Can you tell me?
Teacher should make eye contact with the students.
Very good. Very good. Mhm.
Engage the students to have a summarize.
Yeah. Without teacher summarizing it, you actually have a technique like question and answers or something like that. If not, students actually can draw some illustrations and show. They are summarizing it. Very good. What else?
Use the safety precautions while you.
Yeah, very good. All safety precautions to be actually taken then. That the teacher position is very important, that each and every student should see and hear the teacher. Am I right?
Yes, ma'am.
Teacher positioning is very important. Then what else?
Use visual aids, madam.
Yeah, definitely. You can actually show it. You can show it by using visual aids, by doing it yourself, by showing them a video or whatever. Anyway, it's showing. Okay. So using visual aids to show it is okay. Teacher can herself can do it. Teacher can use visual aids. Teacher can use YouTube videos. But anyway, it's showing. Very good. Yeah, you're correct. So that is about the demonstration method. Okay. Then we come to the next, the discussion method. What do you think of discussion method? It is a teacher-centered one or student-centered approach? It is grounded on teacher-centered approach or student-centered approach?
Student-centered.
Student-centered.
Yeah, because there is actually student active participation. No, they actually discuss. They actually present their ideas. They interact with each other. They interact with the teacher. They interact with the other students, and they actively engage in the discussion. So this is actually a student-centered, grounded on student-centered approach. So if it is a discussion, what do you think how to, it's student-centered. What do you think that how to conduct the discussion effectively? What do you think? Now, students are active participants. They are interactive. So how can you organize a discussion then?
Grouping the students properly.
Yeah, grouping, but discussion can be group work. Discussion can be whole class as well. You don't have to always group them. You can actually have a discussion with the whole class as well. Am I right? Yes or no? Yes or no? Yeah. Discussions can be whole class. Discussions can be group. So if it is group discussion, you have to actually properly grouping them using grouping techniques. Grouping is a technique, right? We will be discussing it under techniques. So what else? Make sure that everyone respects each other's opinions. Am I right? Yeah, in a discussion, you have to make sure that each and every student has the respect for the other students. Respect means that they can actually remain objective, open-minded when the others actually present their ideas. You have to actually accept the contribution of others. And at the same time, you will be able to think independently as well without being influenced by the others as well. So that is a skill that you should develop. If you are to be a very good discussion, be in a very good discussion, you have to accept others' opinions. You have to know that they also have valid ideas. So you have to value it. You have to show respect by valuing their ideas. And you have to actually remain objective without getting influenced. And you have your own independent thinking as well. So what else? That no child is dominating the class. So when you actually open the classroom for discussion, sometimes students, good ones, they dominate. Others are just made to listen and enjoy their presentations, enjoy what they say. And they actually think, they are made to think, we don't know anything, they only know. And teacher also actually don't cater to those who are silent. And those who are actually jumping into the discussion without giving any opportunity for anybody else, they are entertained by the teachers. That is wrong. That is, you're inculcating wrong values in them. So if you're organizing a discussion, you have to make sure that each and every child gets a chance. Each and every child's ideas are valued. Okay. What else? Now, students should be actually to the point. Students should not be actually engaged in a discussion without being prepared. So always teacher has to make sure that the students are prepared for the discussion by giving them the topics beforehand, by guiding them on how to collect information about the topic and all that. It's not just getting them to verbalize what they already know, which is right or wrong or relevant or irrelevant. No. Teacher has to guide them, right? And teacher has to actually provide support and guidance to get them to be ready for the discussion. So they are informed and they are prepared. Make sure that you actually get them to be prepared for the discussion. Okay, otherwise it becomes a waste of time. And everyone speaks loudly and clearly, then everyone can hear them. So you don't get offended when your ideas are not valued, when you are not given the best opportunity to talk, when others talk bullshit which is not relevant for anything. If you are a kind of in a discussion, you are not to be offended. Okay. And even in a discussion, they can ask questions for clarification. So then some students actually present their ideas. If you're not clear about what they are telling, so in the discussion method, there should be room for you to actually get it clarified. That is it. Now, give me a second. Teacher responsibilities and role in discussion. There are 3 points given. You can read it and further explain it to the rest of the class. What are the teacher responsibilities and roles in discussion? I will give you 1 minute for you to think, read the 3 bullets, and then think of explaining and with examples to the rest of the class. Topic is teacher responsibilities and role in discussions. Right. Are you ready? Can you explain this? What is the teacher responsibility and the role in conducting discussions or using discussions as a method in the classroom teaching? Yes. Can you talk? Equal opportunities are given. Equal opportunities are given to all the students to actually contribute in a way without focusing only on the good ones, those who actually are very forward in the class, they dominate and they go on talking. No, the teacher has to manage the class that everyone should get a chance to actually discuss or contribute to the discussion. So what else? Second one, organize, summarize, and synthesize. The teacher has to organize the discussion. At the end of the discussion, that the teacher has to summarize and synthesize. Put 2 and 2 together, synthesize. Okay, all the ideas together. Then guide the discussion on the correct track. Make sure the objectives of the lesson are met. So that is a danger, no, in student-centered methods. They can go out of topic. Okay, they can go out of topic. but teacher makes sure that they don't go out of topic. You monitor them, you actually guide them, you make sure that they are on track, they are not deviating from what they are supposed to discuss. So that is the teacher role, which is not really easy class. Okay, right. So what did we discuss about discussion method? Can one of you summarize? Can one of you summarize or tell me what did we discuss on the discussion method? Can't. Hello? Hello?
It is a student-centered method. There are many advantages of using this method.
Yeah. Then yes, continue.
Um,
Somebody's background knowledge is not good. Somebody's background noise is not good. Yes, you tell. Yes, you tell. Yes, please. You were telling something, no? Right, okay. Discussion method is highly student-centered. Students are not empty vessels. They have some knowledge, prior knowledge with them. And the teachers can actually get the students to actively take part in discussions. It's highly motivating for the students because they are not just passive, they say. So when they say it, it's 70% or more of remembrance and learning. And when organizing a discussion, the teacher has to make sure, right, that everyone gets an opportunity to talk, contribute. And teacher has to organize and carry out the discussion and synthesize, put two and two together and provide the final outcome of the discussion. And then the teacher has to guide the discussion on the correct path, not allowing the students to deviate from the topic. Otherwise, it happens. The students deviate from the topic and then they forget, they don't actually learn what they're supposed to learn. Okay. So this is about the discussion method, which is grounded on student-centered learning. Then we go to discovery method. Okay, then we go to discovery method. If it is discovery method, give me a second. Instead of teacher explaining all the facts, the method monitors the students to find out knowledge. In this method, the student acts as an investigator, explorer, knowledge seeker. Many shortcomings of the lecture method have been overcome in this method. It can be regarded as active self-learning method. The teacher is expected to motivate the students to regulate self-learning. The main objective of this method is not only transferring knowledge, but also the development of self-esteem, novelty, freedom, then soft skills, etc. Okay. So discovery methods, the students are guided on discovery by the teacher. Okay. Now you have a small homework. What are the teaching methods we discussed so far? What are their advantages? What are their disadvantages? You can complete the grade. Okay, what are their advantages? What are their disadvantages? Do it for homework. Think of each of the lecture method, demonstration method, discussion method, and discovery method. What are their advantages? What are their disadvantages that you can actually write? Can you do it for homework?
Okay, ma'am.
Okay,
Yeah,
madam.
okay.
Yes, madam.
Yes, please. And then we get to another one. That is, we call it the scientific method. They are very new methods, you know. Um, uh, Even with the young learners, even with primary students, not the very young primary classes like grade 4, 5, like, you can use this scientific method. If you look at Cambridge, edXL, science syllabuses and all that, this scientific method is there with the young learners as well. Okay. So because of that, you have to actually use these student-centered methods in the class when appropriate. Scientific method cannot be used with each and every topic, each and every subject. But when it is appropriate, when it is applicable, that you have to make sure that you use the scientific method as well. Though not with each subject, each topic that it is okay. But there are topics, there are subjects that you can use scientific method very often, right? So scientific method is an organized way of answering and solving a problem. Organized way, right? It is a kind of a body of technique. Sorry. It's a body of techniques for investigating phenomena, acquiring new knowledge, or correcting and integrating previous knowledge, connecting and integrating previous knowledge. To be termed scientific method is a method of inquiry, is commonly based on measurable evidence subject to specific principles of learning. We will actually understand this once we look at this activity. Method is conducted in a very systematic way. This method has its own steps. Like you can get them to identify a problem first, right? You get the students to identify a problem, and then you get the students to read literature available about the problem. And then you get the students to make an educated guess or a hypothesis. Likewise, the scientific method is conducted according to the steps of the scientific method. So, what are those steps of the scientific method? I will get you to watch a video and know the steps of the scientific method, starting with identification of a problem to be solved, and then reading literature about the problem, and then you come to know about the problem better. And then third step would be that you formulate a tentative hypothesis. And if we do like this is the result like. So we will be discussing it after watching this TV video, okay? So let me play it for you. Are you listening?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, madam.
Madam.
Yes.
Yeah, okay. Anybody who knows the steps of the scientific method? Anybody, please? Scientific method
Ask a
is not
question.
suitable. Yeah,
Ask a question.
yeah. First, identification of problem. No,
Yeah, madam.
identify a problem. Then,
Form a hypothesis.
before that, you have to read the literature, know more about the problem, right? You have to find knowledge, information, gather information, etc. Then,
Experiment.
yeah, forming the hypothesis as you said. Tentative statement, okay? Tentative statement, the hypothesis. Then experiment. Then you have to experiment. Then,
Observe and record.
yeah, observing and recording information, data. Then,
And draw conclusions.
yeah,
Share your findings.
yeah,
Analysis.
okay. Yeah, analysis of the findings. Yes, very good. So these are the steps of the scientific method, and we are going to watch this video and come to know what are the steps of the scientific method, Kiela. Okay. The scientific method steps and examples are like a very long one, going into 8 minutes. We can't be playing like that. Scientific method, a simple one. Scientific method for kids Kelapera. Even with the little ones, the Cambridge syllabus has the scientific method. Okay, you don't have to think it's impossible. Sharing. Can you see and hear the video?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes, madam.
Yeah, yeah. You can hear it as well, no? Yeah. There's a connection error, what is, because now it's still coming. Let's see. Is it a problem?
It's probably hard to imagine a time when the whole world had no idea
This is the
about
wrong
microorganisms
video.
living in their water, bacteria,
Okay.
cells, or even sperm. But that's
You can hear and see, no?
the scientific method is about ordinary people doing ordinary things. That includes you, me, and other scientists in the world. The scientific method is just a process or steps taken to produce reliable results to answer a specific question. Maybe you think you don't use a scientific method in your life, but I can guarantee that you do. For example, imagine you wake up on a Saturday and you couldn't find your cell phone. That's an observation. Then you do a little research by thinking about the last time you had it. You suspect that it might be in the pocket of your pants from yesterday. That's a hypothesis. And when you check your pants, you're doing an experiment. But science and life don't always go as planned, and you find no cell phone in your pants pocket. So the second observation leads you to think again and recall what else you did yesterday. You remember that you put your cell phone in your backpack during school. So you decide it must be there, and you go and check. And lo, there it is. Life can continue, and you're so happy that you share the results with your best friend and explain why it took you so long to text them back. Science. These are the steps of the scientific method. And at any step, you can go back and repeat the process. Typically, after you conduct an experiment and conclude that your results aren't answering the question, you go back and try something else. And really, truly, observations and research are going on the entire time. Science is a continually ongoing process. Now let's break down each of these steps into their component parts. All that can be observed with the 5 senses are included in observations. You use your sense of smell, sight, taste, touch, and hearing to make your observations in science. Research is an important step in science because it may answer other questions you have and help refine your experiment before you go down a path that leads to nowhere or conduct an experiment that's already been done. Make sure you use reliable sources to learn background information. Scientific journals and online sources that are vetted and trusted are best. Avoid information from blogs and out-of-date textbooks, as the information might not be reliable. Once you have your research completed, you can form your hypothesis, which is a prediction of what you believe will occur. It is often seen as an if-then statement and is very specific. Here's an example. If gummy bears are placed in water for 24 hours, then they will swell to over twice their original size. It has an if and a then, and uses specific terms that make this experiment repeatable. The experiment itself is made of several parts. Most experiments collect two types of data, qualitative and quantitative. Qualitative data relies on descriptions like soft, yellow, shiny, or wet. Quantitative data relies on numbers like 25 centimeters or 2.3 grams. Once you know what types of data you're going to collect, you can define the variables in your experiment. There is the independent variable, which is the thing you change to see how it affects your dependent variable, which is the thing you measure. So in the gummy bear example, the change in the experiment is that the gummy bears are being placed in water. The dependent variable is the volume of the gummy bear, which is measured before and after it's soaked in the water. A valid experiment will have both an experimental group, where the independent variable is altered, and a control group, which can be used to compare the experimental group to the normal or unaltered version. In the gummy bear experiment, the bears placed in water are the experimental group, and the dry gummy bears are the control, because that's how gummy bears normally are. So to summarize, an experiment should have an experimental group and a control group. The experimental group will have an independent variable and a dependent variable, and the data that is measured and collected can be qualitative, quantitative, or both. Thanks for watching this episode of Teacher's Pet. Don't forget to like and subscribe, and follow me on Twitter at SciencePet.
Back to the lecture note, and then we'll further explain it. Right. Now you saw the steps of the scientific method. Okay, first is the observation or the identification of the problem. So observation or identification of you hear, you feel, you taste, like that, through your sensory organs, that you receive information and you observe and identify a problem. So you have to train your students in that, okay? If you are to make them scientific thinkers. So a scientific method is used, okay? So they are very vigilant. They receive information through the 5 senses, and they observe and they identify problems. Then the second is that they have to actually collect more information about the problem that they identify. Right? They read, they go to the library, they talk to people and gather information about the problem. And then step 3 is they form a hypothesis. Or අපි කියනවා ඒකට tentative statement කියලා. They form a hypothesis or a tentative statement. So they gathered a lot of information. So based on that, they write, there's a problem. The problem is, I will give you a classroom teaching problem, right? So you're a teacher. So you are actually using the scientific method. You are receiving a lot of information and you observe a problem that your students are weak in mathematics. There are 5 students, those who are weak in mathematics. So that is the problem identified. Then step 2 is your reading literature. Reading literature means it doesn't mean that you read only. You talk to other teachers and see why there are some students, those who are very weak in mathematics. What can we do? What are the reasons for that? You talk to the students and you read theories of learning mathematics and then see why they are not actually learning mathematics and all that. You gather information through research. Literature review, that is the second step, right? Then you're informed now. So now third step is you actually form a hypothesis or an educated guess. It's a form of tentative can not proved yet, statement, right? So after reading literature, after talking to teachers and all that, you decide what the exact problem mathematics learning in your class, then you see your class is a low level ability class, right? This is class C. Those who have actually not doing very well in studies are put into this class. So because of that, their levels are very low. So you read literature theories and then you learn. If you teach them mathematics in the mathematics lab, using equipment, using videos, using tools, they will learn better. So you form a hypothesis. The hypothesis is a tentative statement yet to be proved. So it's an informed guess. So you form the hypothesis. If mathematics is taught in the lab setting, students learn better. Students learn mathematics easily. So that is the hypothesis you formed based on the literature review. Okay, that is a third. So in that hypothesis, you have variables. Basically dependent and independent variables. Now, in that hypothesis you formed, they learn mathematics better in the mathematics lab. What depends on what? What is the independent variable? What is the dependent variable? There are two variables. Learning mathematics in the mathematics lab, developing mathematics skills. They are the two variables. Which is the dependent, which is the independent? Yes, please. Which is the dependent, which is the independent? Are you there?
Repeat again, ma'am.
Yeah. My hypothesis I formed after reading literature is mathematics is learnt better when mathematics is taught in the lab setting. Mathematics is learnt better when mathematics is taught in the lab setting. There are two variables here. Mathematics taught in lab setting, mathematics learnt easily. Teaching mathematics in lab, mathematics is learnt easily. They are the two variables. Which one is dependent, which one is independent? Teaching mathematics in the lab is independent. Am I right?
Yes, madam.
And yeah, learning mathematics better is dependent variable because it depends on the teaching of mathematics is the dependent variable. Using mathematics lab is the independent variable in this hypothesis. Okay. So that is after reading literature, you actually form a hypothesis to be tested because hypothesis is a tentative statement, not yet proved. You're going to see whether it is proved or not. So you're going to test it, right? So then you have to actually carry out the experiment. Now, in this example, you have to actually teach your students mathematics by taking them to the mathematics lab. That is the experiment. You carry out the experiment. Then you collect data. After doing the experiment, you collect data. You can collect quantitative data, qualitative data. Quantitative data, numbers. Quantitative data is numbers. Frequencies, mode, mean, etc. But qualitative means you explain it in words. You explain it in words. And you collect data and see whether data. If your students have learned mathematics better because you taught them in the lab setting, their score is very high. Now they get good marks for the mathematics test. then your hypothesis is proved. But you taught them using the mathematics lab, but they remain the same. Their marks is as same as the before. Then your hypothesis is not proved. Those are the steps of the scientific method. So I gave you an example as teachers, what kind of scientific methods that you can use, scale example. But let's actually have a look at how the students can actually use the scientific method to carry out some experiments and controlling variables and all that, engage in scientific method. So here's an example. Activity 5, complete the grid. Now these are the explanations. These explanations you have to match with the first column, the steps of the scientific method, and observation is made. Then a problem is defined or a question is asked. Identify a problem. Then a hypothesis is proposed after reading literature. Then a controlled experiment is set up, carried out, a study. Data is collected and analyzed. Conclusions are made. Process is repeated to verify results. Now, if the hypothesis is proved, your students have learned much better because of the language lab. Then you're going to do it again and do it again before you actually make a kind of share your knowledge with others. So these are the steps of the scientific method, and here you have some examples. So you have to match these examples with the different steps of the scientific method. Now you know the steps of the scientific method. Okay, you know the steps of the scientific method. Can you see which one is which? Okay, let me. It got stuck there. It's okay. Now these are the steps, seven steps. An observation is made, a problem is defined, or question is asked, a hypothesis is proposed, a controlled experiment is set up, data is collected and analyzed, conclusions are made, and process is repeated to verify results. So this is done by students, okay? So these are this is the example. So can you match it with the stages of the scientific method? Okay. I want you. Are you listening?
Was the this
Yes,
year is
ma'am.
the problem.
Yeah, do it silently and then come back to me. I will give you 2 minutes for that. Do it individually, silently, and then come back to me.
Kerala. By receiving 1 cup of water daily to half in diameter, and those receiving 2 cups of water do 3/4 in diameter. වක්කතාද දෙන්නවනේ? මොනවද දෙන්නවනේ?
Please make sure your background noise is proper. If not muted. Done? Is it done?
No, ma'am. Give me some more time, ma'am.
Okay, I will. Yeah. Okay. When you are ready, you tell me.
Ma'am, can you scroll up the slide to see the table, ma'am?
Okay. Mm. Can I get back to the experiment?
Yes, ma'am. Okay.
Okay. Yeah.
Ready? Move down. This is why did the
Okay. We'll give it a try now.
Okay, madam.
Right. Which one is the first one?
Raspberries did not grow well this year.
You're correct. Raspberries did not grow well this year. That is the observation made. Okay. Right. What is the next one? The next one
Why
is the
did
problem is
why
defined
did the
or a question is
raspberries
why
asked.
did the raspberries not grow well this
Why
year?
did the raspberries
Very
not
good.
grow well this year?
Okay. Very good. What is the next step?
Raspberry
Forming
plants are
hypothesis.
placed in
A hypothesis is proposed. What is the hypothesis proposed?
the sixth one. Raspberries plants are placed in
placed in moderately.
No. That is not the hypothesis.
first
The
one.
last one. You see,
Last one.
the
Okay.
raspberries did not grow well because we did not get much rain. Because you start reading literature, then literature says for the raspberry to grow well, you should it should get enough water. It should get enough rain. So then you form the hypothesis, raspberries did not grow well because we did not get much rain. That is the hypothesis. Tentative statement, yet to be proved. වතුර නැත්තම් raspberry වෙවෙන්නේ නැද්ද කියලා දැන් බලන්න ඕනේ. Got it?
Yes, ma'am.
Yes,
Yeah,
madam.
it's clear. Then after hypothesis is proposed, a controlled experiment is set up.
First one, madam.
Controlled
Sixth
experiment
one.
set up. Which one?
Sixth.
Yeah, sixth one. Raspberry plants are placed in moderately lit areas, all receiving the same amount of light each day. Each plant will receive different amounts of water because you're testing whether the water is a kind of factor. Okay, so you think rains නැති නිසා තමයි raspberry නැත්තේ. Emana, you have to actually take water as a kind of independent variable there. Okay, so the size of the berries will be recorded daily once the plants begin to produce berries. මේ water කියන fact එක කොහොමද බලපාන්නේ කියන එක තමයි experiment එකකින් කරේ. Right. So then you collect data and analyze them. What is it?
The first one.
First one,
The
madam.
first one. The raspberry plants receiving 1 cup of water daily grew to half an inch in diameter, and those receiving 2 cups of water grew to 3/4 in diameter. Okay, very good. So then after analyzing the data, what is the next step?
Repeat experiment.
Yeah. Conclusions are made and then only repeated. What are the conclusions made?
Repeat experiment.
No, ඒකට ඉස්සලා තියෙනවනේ conclusions are made කියලා. What is the conclusion here? The raspberry plants receiving the most water grew
You
better.
because therefore.
Therefore, the hypothesis is supported that this year's raspberries did not get enough rain. So you see whether the hypothesis is proved or not. That is actually, we call it conclusion. Okay. And then it is repeated, then the repeat experiment. So your students in grade 4 or 5 also can be made to actually be very scientific in their thinking. So these kind of experiments can be conducted. These kind of experiments can be conducted. So I give you 5 minutes or more than that even. So you actually, are you into Cambridge and Edexcel teaching? No.
No, madam.
No, right. Anyway, if you are a science teacher, these kind of experiments are conducted I have seen some students actually bringing differs and adding some water every day and covering it with different shades of lights taken like that. They are made to think scientifically by getting them to do experiments. Now I will give you 5 minutes or less. Is it? Can you do it in 3 minutes? Or you need 5 minutes to think of an experiment to be actually given to your students, right? Your students only conduct the experiment following these stages as we read the raspberry example. Can you do it if I give you 2-3 minutes? Yes or no?
Try, madam.
We can try,
Give it a
ma'am.
try. Yeah, you can try. It is 9:03 now. I will make it 9:08. 5 minutes. Okay, you can actually search also. There are no hard and fast rules that you don't have to search, Kayla. Okay? I will give you 9:08 when I can time. But I want a very good example from you. Can you do that?
Yes, ma'am.
All right.
The level was low this year.
So what? You have examples?
Yes, madam.
Okay, shall we share your examples with the rest of the class?
Okay, madam.
Yeah. You can.
Apple experiment, madam.
Sorry?
Apple experiment, madam.
Uh-huh.
Observation is the apple slices turn brown after sitting out. Is it correct, madam?
Yeah, correct. Correct.
Second question. Can I help stop the apple from turning brown? Hypothesis is I believe dipping apple slices in a liquid will show the apples slice from the turning brown. Next one, predict. Madam, I got the this one from internet, madam.
It's okay. Go ahead.
Prediction is, madam, I predict lemon juice, milk, water will keep the apple slices from turning. Experiment. Take apple slices from the same apple. Dip one of each slices in lemon juice, milk, and water. Observe slices and record data. Conclusion is dipping apple slices in slowed or stop the apple slice from turning brown.
Then what is the conclusion?
Conclusion is dipping apple slices in slowed or stop the apple slice from turning brown.
Okay. It's a very good one, actually speaking. So you can actually get your students also to do experiments like that and get them to develop a scientific mind. So these are actually highly student-centered approaches. So until you actually try this in schools and get the learners to actually engage in this kind of scientific thinking, that your students will never be able to develop that thinking in them, right? So very good example. What's your good name, dear?
Madam, I am Sumaya.
Yes, Sumaya. It's a very good one, right?
Thank you, madam.
Yeah, clap for you. And then others, is there any other example to be shared? Hello, silent killers. Silent killers.
Madam, I got another one also, madam.
Okay, share, Sumaya.
First one, website membership numbers are flat. That is the observation. And ask a question is, how can we increase website registration numbers? Third one, gather data about traffic to the website, including new visitors, returning visitors, engagement, and companies versus partial registrations. Hypothesis is if we make the registration box bigger, more visitors will become members. Test the hypothesis, create an A/B test. Let half the visitors choose A, see the current registration box. In an experiment, this is called the control. Let half the visitors choose B, a larger registration box. In an experiment, this is called the variable. And analyze the results of the test and draw a conclusion is observe the results of the A or B test after 1 month. If visitors who experience choose B registers more often than visitors who saw choice A, we can conclude that more members sign put when the registration box was bigger. Share the result is alert stakeholders to the change in web page design and explain the reason of the change.
Okay. It's a different kind of an example, but it's good. And it actually broadens our thinking about how to plan a scientific method actually to be given to your students, though it is not from the school context. Yes, it is, yes. Yes, Sumaya, thank you very much. And others?
Okay.
No. Nobody has done it yet? අඩු ගානේ නෑ කියලාවත් කියන්න ළමයි. Hello.
Madam, I have made one. Shall I tell?
Yeah, please. What's your name, dear?
My
Yes,
name is
please.
Lashani.
What's your name? Yes, Lashani, go ahead.
I made for beekeeping, about that beekeeping.
Okay.
Yes. So beekeeping did not success in this quarter. That is
Right.
the first one. It
That is the
means,
problem.
yeah, that is the
Identifying.
problem. Yeah.
Okay.
And the second thing is, I have to find it. Why did the bees not come to the hives this quarter?
Yeah.
And then after that, bees did not come to hives. The third step, bees did not come to hives because of the deforestation.
Okay.
And
that is the hypothesis.
yeah. And fourth step, the controlled
okay.
experiment is that is beehives placed in different areas in the country under different weather patterns. And fifth one, data is collected and analyzed, that is put 10 beehives in different areas with different kind of forest. And sixth one, conclusion are made for bees need more thick forest for their breeding and spreading.
Okay.
Last one is repeating experiment.
Okay, that is, yes. It's a good one, actually. Bee making, right? Bee honey making. Okay, very good.
Yeah.
That is good.
Thank you.
That is Lashani, right? So Sumaya spoke is to speak about it, and right, if you couldn't do it in the 5 minutes given, is it possible for you to search internet or think on your own and think of a suitable activity to be conducted in the science to be done using the scientific method? Is it possible for you to do it for homework?
Yes, ma'am.
Search Cambridge syllabuses, Edexcel syllabuses, then you will be able to find good examples and share. You can share it with the class next time. Okay,
Okay, madam.
Right, okay. Now let's see. After the scientific method, we have the Dale's code I discussed now, because you have to get them to do it and learn. When they do it and learn, 90% of learning and remembrance. So that is why that we should learn, do it and learn. Experience is a model that incorporates several theories related to instructional design and learning processes During the 1960s, Edgar Dale theorized the learners retain more information by what they do as opposed to what is heard, read, or observed. His research led to the development of the corner experience. Today, this learning by doing has become known as experiential learning or action learning. Right? That we discussed that. I showed you the Dale's cone as well. So that actually proves the importance of getting the students to be active participants in the learning process and getting them to say and do it for more learning and remembrance. Okay, remembering, that is it. So what I have planned for the day is done. So I will show you an overview of what I'm going to do next week, and I will be sending you the lecture notes by Monday or Tuesday. Okay, I can't guarantee it is by Monday itself, Kela. Maybe by Tuesday, I will be sending. So now, let me show you the next lesson. Right, give me a second. Next week, I will be discussing I will be discussing, I don't have to show it to you, some more methods. Under some more methods, I will be discussing flipped method and the jigsaw method. Have you heard of the flipped method?
No, madam.
No. Have you heard of the jigsaw method?
No, madam.
Yeah, I will be doing flipped method, jigsaw method, and project method because they are very modern and the teachers are expected to use these methods in the class. Why? They say they do more learning, as said by the Dale School of Learning. They do and say then there is more learning. Because of that, teachers are actually supposed to use these methods in the classroom. So flipped method is actually a very advanced and very modern, but the teachers use this method. After the COVID actually, now the students have access to online internet and they are allowed to use the cell phone or mobile for learning purposes and all that. With that, of course, that we could actually continue to use the flipped method. It's a very interesting method because the traditional classroom is sent topsy-turvy, upside down, or the traditional class is flipped in this method. So no time to discuss it right now. So we will be discussing it next week. And the jigsaw method also. It's also a very interesting method where you can actually promote interaction, communication, the four C's of the 21st century. Now, what are the four C's of the 21st century? To be realized through education. What are the four C's of the 21st century to be realized through education?
Madam, critical
The four
thinking,
C's. Very good. Yeah, you're correct.
collaboration, critical thinking, communication, creativity.
Very good. Those are the four skills. Communication, cooperation, critical thinking, and creativity. So education should steer towards or that aims at developing the four skills, the four C's of the 21st century skills. So if you use these methods like flipped method, if you use jigsaw method, if you use scientific method, if you use project method, you are getting them to develop not only the subject knowledge, but the 21st century as well. That is the goal of education. So using traditional methods like lecture method, demonstration method, that you will never be able to get the learner to develop the four skills, the four C's of the 21st century skills. So because of that, because the goal of education is the development of the four skills. So using lecture method, using demonstration method, you will never be able to get them to develop the four C's. Okay, that is it. With that, we can actually stop. We have only 5 more minutes. Today, what I discussed was, I discussed the methods that is to be used in the classroom. So first thing is, what are the criteria to select the best method? So the philosophical assumption or the teaching approach you decide on, then the size of the class, time factor, and then the deep content to be taught, and then resources available, the level of the student, the learner profile. All these has to be taken into consideration in selecting the method. And then we discuss 2 teacher-centered methods. They are lecture method and demonstration method. Under lecture method, we discuss what are the features of lecture method and how to make the lecture method more effective. Under demonstration method, we discuss what are the qualities of a good demonstration. And then we moved on to student-centered methods, starting with discussion, how to conduct a discussion and what's the role of the teacher in organizing or carrying out discussion method. And then we discuss, after the discussion method, we discuss what?
Discovery method.
Discovery method. And then after the discovery method, the scientific method. So we have another 2 methods to be discussed, that is flipped method and the jigsaw method next week. And then only that we will move on to classroom techniques. Okay. So the work is done for the day. I think we can stop. Any questions before we end the meeting?
Madam, could you please send us the content of that education technology subject?
Content means?
The syllabus. What are
The syllabus. Okay. I will. Rather than sending you the syllabus, if I send you the materials, you can actually see what content is covered. Am I right?
Yeah, madam.
Because you know why I'm not sending you the course descriptor? There is no such course descriptor sent to us, right? We have to actually plan our work, and you know, there's a kind of we have to see as we progress how much of method, how many methods, how many. So because of that, rather than sending you the course descriptor, so everyday basis, you know what we are covering. Am I right?
Yeah, madam.
Yeah, I'm covering the syllabus. Okay, you have to trust me. But in covering the syllabus, of course, I have to take into several things into consideration and accordingly do it. Right?
Okay, madam.
Right, okay. Then thank you for joining. So I can end the meeting. Am I right?
Okay, madam.
Okay, see you. Good night. Bye-bye.
you.
See you next week.
Madam.
Madam, goodbye, madam.
Okay.